Back when I lived in the rural Midwest, about 10 years ago, I lived in a house right off the highway. My house was right between one town and another, almost right on the county line. Our house had a big circle driveway. If you drove in the driveway, you would be going straight towards our barn, and if you curved right, you could pull into our garage. If you went past the garage, you could circle around in front of the house and pull back out to where you started. Our house had two large double doors in the front, which we rarely used. We always used the door that was inside the garage. One night, it was very late, and my doorbell rang. My husband, my 3-year-old daughter, and I were all asleep. It woke me up, and I thought I was dreaming. It rang again. I woke my husband up. He thought I was hearing things until it rang once more. It was very dark outside, but we had a dusk to dawn light, so most of the driveway was pretty lit up. Unfortunately, you can't really see the front door unless you open the door and look out. You can open just one at a time, or you can open them both by using two latches that are on the top and the bottom of one of the doors. My husband gets up and I follow him. He decides he's going to open the door. I want to call the cops, but because we live on the county line, we know it's going to be a while before they can get here. He opens the door to a girl, maybe in her early 20s. She looks normal except for the fact that she's standing at my door in the middle of the night. I look past her, and her car is pulled into my driveway just off the road, not up to the house, and not around the circle. She told us she needed to use the phone. She says her car battery died or something. Wasn't really sure about the exact problem. Regardless, she can't get it to start. I told my husband no fucking way. This is how horror movies start, and we offered to call the cops, which should be the county sheriff. She asks over and over, but I am not letting her in. We tell her we will call for her, and she kind of stomps off. We watched her walk back to the car, which was about 50 feet away. I can see her car and her. I proceeded to call the cops. They said they'd be there as soon as they could, maybe about 15 minutes. They don't sound very concerned, and at this point, I'm not really either. I mean, it's just a girl. She probably does have a dead battery. She opens the trunk. No lights came on. Then she rummages around in the trunk. And soon after, the driver's side door opens. Out steps a guy. Then the back passenger door opens. Out steps one more guy. They all rummage around the trunk. No lights on. I can't hear anything. I can't hear them talking, and I can't tell what they're doing. They all get back in the car. Now at this point, maybe 5 minutes have gone by, and I am silently praying that the sheriff puts his foot on the gas and gets here quick. But I know it's going to be another 10 minutes or so. They just sit there, in the car, lights off, not moving. I can't see them when they are in the car, but I know they're in there. I know they didn't have to get out of the car and walk past the house, because they would have had to walk right under the dusk to dawn light. If they did, I would have seen them. Then, I saw someone walking towards the car from the right, coming from the direction of the barn. It was a man. I had no idea who this man was. We didn't have a neighbor for at least a mile, and he's coming from the back of my property, which ends in a creek. He walked under the dusk to dawn light straight to the car. He didn't look at the house, just walked to the car and got in the back. The car starts up, and they slowly back out of my driveway and head north. The cops arrive about 10 minutes later, and at this point I am freaking out. They searched around but couldn't find anything. They asked us if we got a license plate, but they were parked too far away. They tell us to call if they come back. Yeah, thanks a lot for your help, officer. My husband goes and gets a shotgun from the shop on our property, and we try to go back to sleep. They never came back. I don't know who those people were. and I don't know what they wanted. Creepy people in a car without an actual dead battery. Let's never, ever meet again. This happened back when I was 11 or 12 years old. It was the beginning of summer, and I begged my mom to take me to the water park in the next town. She couldn't drive, so she arranged for her friend to drop me off and pick me back up. I was a decent swimmer and had been alone a couple of times before. My mom had given me the money for the admission and a little extra to get a drink and snack from the vending machines. I arrived and got changed, put my bag in a locker and strapped the key around my ankle. I couldn't wait to get on the slides. There weren't too many people there, as it was early evening, around 6 p.m., so I got on all the slides relatively quickly. My favorite was the River Rapids slide. On this slide, you would slide down small sections, splashing into small pools in between. You were supposed to use a rubber ring, but most kids, and some adults, didn't bother. No one ever worked on the slides anyway, so it was a bit of a free-for-all. I went down the River Rapids slide for the 4th or 5th time and splashed into the first pool. I mucked around for a bit there before wading towards the next section of the slide. I was completely alone on the slide, or so I thought. The next pool after this section of slide was a dark, enclosed section. I like to sit in there sometimes and relax before finishing the ride. However, this time, someone was already in there. A larger woman in her 30s or 40s lay on her stomach with her feet over the last section of slide. Her head was peeking above the water. She was cackling loudly, a hysterical, guttural laugh. She looked me bolt in the eyes and pushed herself down the last section of the slide, still laughing as it echoed off the slide walls. I was thoroughly freaked out and waited 5 minutes before sliding down so I didn't encounter her at the bottom. Presuming it was a random freaky coincidence, I went straight back on the slide. Again, no one else was around. I rode the first section normally before apprehensively sliding the second section into the dark cave pool. And I heard it again. That creepy, genuine, hysterical laughter. There she was, the same woman from before, grinning and laughing while staring straight at me. She again flushed herself down the slide, leaving me alone. I decided I wasn't going to ride the River Rapids slide again after that visit. She petrified me. I decided to go on the black hole next. It was a one-person slide. You're supposed to wait for the light to go green before sliding, so I figured I would be okay. The key word here is supposed. I flung myself into the black abyss of the tube ride. However, I heard a second thud behind me. I turned around, and, in the darkness, was a shadowy figure of an overweight middle-aged woman following me down the slide. And once again, she started laughing loudly and hard. The kind of laugh where you can barely pause for a breath, as if you have seen the funniest show or meme you could imagine. I have never been more terrified in my life. I panicked, slamming my hands down on the floor of the slide and pushing to make myself go faster. It worked only a bit, because she was never far behind, cackling away. When I reached the bottom, I threw myself out of the landing strip area, grazing my knee. I ran to the changing rooms, not looking back. I locked myself in a stall and removed the key from my ankle before running out to grab my stuff, and went straight back in. I got changed and bolted from the building and called my mom. She sent her friend to pick me up right away. So, creepy laughing water park lady, let's not meet again. I remember reading about somebody having an encounter and their dog possibly saving their life, and it reminded me of my own story with my pup. I rescued a pit bull from a neglectful family. She was skin and bones when she came home and extremely submissive. After a week of love, affection, and food, she was the most amazing dog I have ever met. The softest, cuddliest baby who wouldn't even play fight with me unless she was under a blanket and didn't know it was me. I needed to do a quick late-night run to my local shop. There's a 40-minute round-trip route on the main roads with houses, or a 15-minute round-trip route through an alleyway that wraps around the back of a school field. This alleyway had no street lamps, but I hadn't ever heard of anything bad happening, so I didn't think anything of it. So, I set out with my dog in tow. Just before we reached the entrance, she stood as still as a rock. I gently tried to usher her to follow me, but she refused. When I took my headphones off, I realized that she was softly growling and that I could hear a group of male voices coming from the alley. They soon came close enough to where I could see them, and I think there were around 5 or 6 of them. This was during COVID, so they were all wearing masks with their hoods up. My mom always told me that if I found myself in a situation like this, to not act scared. Being scared shows that you are an easy target. With that in mind, I tugged firmly on my dog's leash to get her to follow me. She stuck to my side, literally pressing her body against my leg as I walked. It felt awkward, and I had to try very hard to walk normally. She was quietly growling the whole time. The men had stopped and were standing slightly off the path to one side at this point. They were talking quietly amongst themselves as we walked by. I couldn't really hear much as my heartbeat was pounding in my ears and my gut was screaming at me. Once I knew I was at a point where the darkness of the alley made me essentially visible, I heard one of them raise their voice slightly and said, "Nah, that's a pit," in a way that sounded like he was disagreeing. Now, they could have just been discussing the breed of my dog. That is a likely scenario, but the gut feeling I had while walking past, and for the duration of my walk through the alley, makes me believe otherwise. I think that these men were discussing possibly robbing me, or worse, and my soft baby, who was literally scared of her own reflection, deterred them due to being an aggressive breed. It's safe to say that we walked the long way home. So, creepy group of men, let's not meet again.